Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight, and thanks for once again making Justice #1 all last weekend. Thank you. And what a show on tap for tonight. KellyAnne Conway, Anthony Scaramucci, both live. Candace Owens also. Patty Blagojevich, wife of former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, joins me to talk about the big move President Trump is considering for her husband. But first, as you know, if you're a regular Justice viewer, I do an opening statement at this time every Saturday. And more often than not, it's about whatever's gotten me fired up that week. And this week, I am fired up. I am angry, but I'm even more confused. Confused as to why Congressman Trey Gowdy of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, one of the few people in Washington who has the intelligence, the expertise, and the ability to see through the nonsense, if not illegality, going on at the FBI and the Department of Justice, Trey Gowdy would say this about a spy placed in the Trump campaign.
I am even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what my fellow citizens would want them to do when they got the information they got, and that it has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
So why was I stunned? And why was I upset with that answer? Number one, Trey Gowdy knows he's not supposed to confirm or deny Spygate. Number two, saying that the placing of a spy or a confidential human source, as the big shots call it, in the Trump campaign has nothing to do with Donald Trump is ridiculous. But instead of me taking on Trey Gowdy tonight in an opening statement, which I fully intended to do, I instead decided to get some insight into what may be his thinking from some of his closest colleagues. So joining me now, Congressman Jim Jordan, Chairman Mark Meadows, and Congressman Ron Desantis, all member of the Freedom Caucus and unrelenting voices in the fight for truth in this Russia probe, all on the the House Oversight and Reform Committee. Now, I'm going to start with you, Mark Meadows. Under no circumstances would anyone even think of placing a spy, or as they want to call it, a confidential human source, someone who clearly has foreign intelligence capabilities, in the campaign of a man running for president of the United States. It has never happened in the history of this country, but these guys did it. So why shouldn't I be furious? And who do they think they're kidding?
Well, Judge, you should be furious, and I can tell you that as we look at the evidence, and Jim and I and Ron have read thousands of pages as we look at this, you should be furious because whether it's spying on the Trump campaign or the Bernie Sanders campaign or any presidential campaign, it's wrong. And what we do have is a growing body of evidence that would suggest just the opposite of what my good friend Trey Gowdy said, is indeed the FBI and DOJ did do things improperly. We know that indeed that there was informants within the Trump campaign prior to the FBI opening an investigation. So we've got to make sure that we get to the bottom of it. Yeah,
and that point is a very important one, and I want my viewers to understand that the timeline here is extremely significant. Now, that bozo Clapper made a statement on The View, and I think we may have it, and I'm going to ask Jim Jordan to take a listen to it.
Was the FBI spying on Trump's campaign?
No, they were not. They were spying on a term I don't particularly like, but on what the Russians were doing, trying to understand, were the Russians infiltrating, trying to gain access, trying to gain leverage and influence.
So why doesn't he like
what they do?
So why doesn't he like that? He should be happy that.
Well, he should be.
Okay, so Jim Jordan, I think you know where I'm going with this. Since when do we put spies in a presidential campaign to find out what the Russians are doing? Why not intercept them on the way in unless you're trying to infiltrate the president's campaign?
And more importantly, Judge, why not tell the Trump campaign? Why not tell the candidate himself? Why not tell the guy who's now president of the United States, hey, we think Russians are trying to infiltrate your campaign, work with people on the periphery. Why not give them a briefing, a defensive briefing? That didn't take place. So that to me is the fundamental reason. And to say he doesn't like the term spy, what else can you call it? It wasn't an informant. It wasn't inside. It was someone from the outside contacting people associated with the Trump campaign to try to get information. If that's not a spy, I don't know what is.
Well, you know what's interesting, Jim, is that I think it was Comey who said, you know, it's not spy, a confidential source, but then he never answers it. He just says there's a difference.
Yeah, Judge, and the FBI and the DOJ want us to say, oh, you can trust us now. We're giving you a briefing. They gave these guys a briefing last week, didn't show them any information, to my understanding.
Well, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going.
But think about this. We have caught them hiding information from us in the past. They hid the fact that Peter Strzok and Judge Contreras were friends. The same, a FISA court Judge Contreras, the same judge who heard Flynn's case. They tried to hide that from us, redacted that information when they gave us some of the Strzok page text messages. So now they tell us, don't worry, even though you caught us hiding information from us, don't worry, you can trust us now.
But you know what's interesting, Congressman Jordan, is the fact that then Contreras is recused from the case, so clearly there was wrongdoing there, like within a week. But I want to go to Congressman Desantis. Trey Gowdy makes this statement, which unfortunately reminds me of Clapper's statement, basically saying, you know, I'm going to rely on Rod Rosenstein from the Department of Justice, who's put Mueller in there after Mueller was taken to be head of the FBI, and Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI. All right. He then says, oh, well, I don't believe any of this was a problem, and my fellow Americans would want this to happen. The guy is too smart, Ron. He is too sophisticated. He is a prosecutor. He's, in fact, one of my heroes. I got to tell you that. I always loved Trey Gowdy, but I don't know if he went to the dark side or what's going on here. So why would Trey Gowdy, who understands credibility, understands lying, understands a courtroom, talk to Christopher Wray, Rod Rosenstein, and say, I haven't seen the documents, but hey, I believe everything they're saying? That's hogwash.
Well, look, I mean, I disagree with his analysis, and it goes to what Jim said, is obviously they should have just told candidate Trump if this was something that they were really concerned about. Instead, they chose to take an aggressive posture vis-a-vis the entire campaign, and they continued that. They launched this massive counterintelligence investigation based off Papadopoulos saying something to Downer, and we now know, Judge, when Downer reported that to U.S. authorities, he didn't even mention emails. It was supposedly, oh, the emails got hacked. He heard about emails. There was never a discussion about emails. So the start of this is as thin as you can possibly be. And I would also say there was more information or evidence that would require you to surveil Hillary's campaign than Trump's campaign.
Which was
I mean, look at the national security implications with the emails. Look at the Clinton Foundation. Look at the fact that they were paying a foreign national, Christopher Steele, to collect dirt on candidate Donald Trump, and yet they never took any aggressive actions vis-a-vis Hillary. It's a big double standard.
Well, you know what, but we're going to go beyond double standard tonight, but I want to go back to Congressman Meadows. So we're now supposed to take the word of the FBI and the Department of Justice when they started this investigation, or the FBI did, under the guise of it being a counterintelligence investigation. Now, I want my viewers, I want you to follow this. There is an ambassador from Australia who invites a low-level, fourth-layer volunteer on the Trump campaign to have a drink at a bar in the United Kingdom. All right? And then this kid supposedly says, hey, you know, they got dirt on Hillary Clinton from the Russians. Now, the problem with that is the guy who's the ambassador from Australia, he was involved in $25 million from Australia going to the Clinton Foundation. So let me just remind my viewers, the ambassador from Australia, $25 million going to the Clinton Foundation, is the guy who basically gets the information to say to the FBI, we got to start a counterintelligence investigation. That smells to high hell. or heaven.
Well, it does smell. I think probably the other thing, Judge, is this. When we look at all of this, the collusion narrative is really more a collusion narrative with the Hillary Clinton campaign and Christopher Steele and some of the other contacts. When we see this, all the evidence would suggest that the FBI and DOJ are not coming clean. Jim Jordan said this right. You know, we're having to not only get documents, but read those documents and then find the evidence that they should have been forthcoming with. You know, it's not just about a judge. It's about the fact that there was redactions made over and over again. It's the fact that Brennan, the CIA director, actually briefed Harry Reid on some of this very information with the knowledge of the White House and colluded with the FBI.
The Obama White House.
Exactly.
Okay, so
we've got to get to the bottom of it. We need the documents.
Well, that's where I'm going in about 2 minutes, so give me a second here. I want my viewers to kind of see what's going on here. So Rod Rosenstein, the guy who appoints Mueller, who's a friend of Comey, to investigate the President of the United States because Rosenstein convinced Sessions to back out. I mean, the whole thing, if you wrote a movie on this, no one would believe it. He says that the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence that's constitutionally obligated to have oversight over his own department, the Department of Justice, is committing extortion. Because the extortion, that's a quote, because you guys want the information that you're entitled to have. What say you, whoever's next?
Well, it can't be extortion, Judge, when it's your constitutional duty. We have an obligation as a separate and equal branch of government to get the information, to get answers for the American people. I have the utmost respect for Trey Gowdy, but when he made the statement, the FBI behaved exactly like my fellow citizens would want them to behave, really? The FBI behaved appropriately when James Comey didn't tell the American people that the guy he leaked information through, Daniel Richmond, was actually an employee of the FBI? Was Andy McCabe behaving appropriately when he lied 3 times under oath? Were Strzok and Page, when they said all the terrible things they said about the President of the United States, behaving appropriately? And when they took the dossier to the court and didn't tell the court who paid for it and who wrote it had been terminated.
When are you going to do something? What we need is McConnell and we need Paul Ryan to get their big boy pants on and do something. The American public is being torn apart over this unrelenting investigation that just won't end. And the FBI and the DOJ are stalling, they're redacting, they're not complying with subpoenas. There are a bunch of, at the upper echelon, there are a bunch of fraudsters right now trying to make you look like fools and trying to make this 2018 election get past them so that they can say that the president is corrupt. So,
Judge,
what are you going to do?
Judge, let me just say, I mean, one, Rosenstein should be recused from this.
How?
He wrote the memo saying to fire Comey. He should be recused.
Guys,
we should fight for that.
I know the intellectual arguments. My viewers want to know, what is the next step? What are you guys going to do? Does
Judge,
the president need
step.
to declassify? Tell me, Jim.
Yes. Yes, he needs to do that. But the next step is we're going to start deposing witnesses this month. We should have done it a long time ago, but we finally pushed. We're going to depose Priest Stepp. We're going to depose Steinbach, other people at the FBI. And what we're pushing for is we need a deposition of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. So that needs to happen ASAP. Should have happened months ago, you're right. But let's do that. And the president should, in fact, the 3 of us sent a letter to him, Judge. We've asked the president to give us all the information we're entitled to see.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the question, guys. How does the president know what to seek to declare other than the FISA warrant and the application if all this stuff is being prevented from his seeing it because they're covering up the dirty work?
The August 2nd memo.
Here's the interesting thing. Here's the interesting thing, Judge. The president is all for transparency. Whether it helps him or hurts him, he wants to get the message out. And I think that that's the message that your viewers and the American people need to hear. It's all about transparency, and it's time that if the DOJ and FBI will not do it, they must be held in contempt. We must put pressure on our leadership to do that. And if they're not willing to come forth, this is the week.
I want all my viewers to get in touch with Paul Ryan, tell him to get off his duff, get the leadership behind this thing, and whoever's got to impeach Rod Rosenstein's got to do it. And if Jeff Sessions can't do his job because he's too scared or recusing himself, maybe he ought to resign himself. But that's just me. Congressman Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, Ron Desantis, thanks so much to all of you for being here tonight.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.